Welcome to Perspectives El Paso. I'm Leon Blevins, Professor of Government at El Paso Community College. We have a special program today about drug court in El Paso, Texas. A number of years ago, I was talking to a friend of mine, Bonnie Rangel, about being on my program to talk about drug court. And I knew that others were involved in this field, and she said she wanted to be on the show, and then she had an automobile accident on the way to a conference about drug court. Yeah. And was never able to get back with me on that. But I got a call just recently from Margaro Gonzalez. Is that right?
Right, Margaro Gonzalez.
Margaro Gonzalez, an assistant to Judge Robert Anchondo. And he said, Judge Anchondo would like to be on your program talking about drug court. And I said, well, I'm ready, exactly. Well, let's have Robert Anchondo on to talk about drug court. And then coming with Judge Anchondo, Judge, welcome to the program.
Professor, thank you. Thank you for having us. Appreciate
and then you brought with you a lawyer, Brock Benjamin. Is that right?
Yes, it is.
And you work in this field of drug court.
Yes, I do criminal defense, and one of the portions of criminal defense is working in a drug court or working with individuals that are placed on probation. And some of the individuals obviously are on D.W.I. drug court probation.
Oh, okay. Well, Judge Anchondo, can I call you Robert?
You bet. Appreciate
Okay, Robert, how long has drug court been functioning as what you call drug court in El Paso County?
Judge Guadarrama started his adult drug court out of the 243rd District Court.
That's David
Guadarrama.
Okay.
Who is now going to be assuming the bench on the other side at the federal level.
Okay.
And so we congratulate him for his efforts, and we congratulate him for his vision that he had in establishing these drug courts. So it started about 10 years ago. I assumed the bench approximately 8.5 years ago, and I was very honored and privileged one day when he called and asked me if I'd like to sit in and preside over some of these cases called drug court, and that's how I became exposed to drug courts. And so once I was assisting him and presiding over some of these cases, a notion or a visionary notion of some sort came to me about possibly implementing that concept into misdemeanors in cases dealing with alcohol, which are your D.W.I. cases.
So they started drug court primarily dealing with felony offenses?
Felony offenses. And actually, drug courts have been around for about 20 years. And it was started by a judge back in Florida. He had the notion of entertaining this concept as to how the judiciary could handle these type of cases dealing with drug and alcohol and things of that nature. So the concept has continued to grow. When I started our drug court, our D.W.I. intervention court, it was approximately about maybe 40. And now Texas has approximately over 100 drug courts that have started up. We presently have about 7. I think we have the most of the counties here in El Paso County. And we deal all the way from juveniles, even the tribal. The Tiguas have a tribal juvenile court, which is a drug court, and they deal with their juveniles. San Medrano, a judge out of the 409th District Court, has his juvenile drug court, and I believe Judge Linda Chu assists him in the juvenile area.
But do most of these turn out to be probated sentences?
They are post-adjudication, what you call they have pled to an offense that they have committed. And once an assessment has been undertaken, not by the judge, by team members, which include probation officers, assistant DAs, public defenders, treatment providers. Law enforcement is very much involved, and we thank Chief Allen and Sheriff Wiles for their contribution. And once all those determinations are made, they'll decide whether this individual can be placed in a drug court to follow a protocol. This protocol is established in the Health and Safety Code under Texas, and it's called the 10-key principle. And basically, they have to follow a regimen of things that they have to comply with. One of those is they have to be seeing a judge on a weekly basis. Another one's they got to continue their treatment, their one-on-ones, their groups, things that are established for an individual.
I work with Concordia Heritage Association. My wife and I are members of that organization, and we have probationers that work with us in keeping Concordia clean. And one day we had a dedication of some of the wrought iron work, and we were introduced to one of these probationers that helped design that and get it constructed. And I talked to him about it. I said, what are you doing? What got you on probation? And he said, one drink too many and driving. Tell us about this, Brock.
D.W.I. is a common offense that you run into people that usually you think of as your neighbors that are charged with. It's a fairly acceptable thing in the United States to drink. We all have cars and we drive, and sometimes we make a bad choice and we get behind the wheel and we drive after we've had a couple too many drinks. And so you're stuck with an individual who's been arrested, charged, and has now pled guilty and is on probation. A probation sentence is simply a sentence where the court has entered a sentence and sentenced somebody to jail, and then has, for lack of a better term, I always like to explain it, held that sentence over their head so that as long as they perform on probation and do everything that they've agreed to do, which usually includes community service, as you're talking about at Concordia, pay a fine, and then attend counseling and treatment, that they can then be rehabilitated and become, once again, and maintain and protect as a productive member of society.
Tell me about success stories, some that you've actually worked with and you've seen it really made difference. Being a drug court assessment, probation, and working with someone like you.
As we were discussing a little bit beforehand, I'm a little bit new to the criminal defense arena. I've been involved in the criminal process for about 4 years now. As an attorney. The last 3.5 has been as an assistant district attorney. But I've seen individuals as a prosecutor that have succeeded. They've come back and they've done different things. For instance, one individual that sticks in mind came back to the court after he was off probation and had thanked the court for helping him get back his life. Right. He had a drinking problem before that. And individuals have to want to change and want to succeed. And one of the things that's nice about drug court is they get that chance. The judge had mentioned that they're in front of a judge in a drug court once a week. Normally, after you're put on probation, the only time you come back and you see a judge is when you've done something, for instance, been arrested again, been caught drinking. If you're on any probation, you can't drink or use drugs. And so it's usually a punitive type sanction as opposed to something where the judge is part of helping you succeed and move forward. Okay,
now our judge here, Robert, you've been with this much longer then. You've seen some success stories. They've really made a difference?
I would probably take more than the allotted time that you've given us.
Yeah, just give me one.
One that stands out is a young lady who would have this kind of MO. Husband would get off work about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, call the wife, they'd go meet at a bar, and sometimes this lady would be taking care of her grandchildren. And so on occasion she had been arrested previously for a D.W.I. On this particular occasion this afternoon, she had her grandchildren. And what happened is that she's pulled over with the grandchildren. Well, in Texas, if you're pulled over and you're suspected of driving while intoxicated and you have children, minor children, that's a felony case. And so she ended up in our court. Fortunately for her, it was dropped from a felony to a Class A misdemeanor, which would be her second. Success story behind this is when she started the program, I have a lot of these individuals that come in before me, and they basically will tell you that there's no problem. They have no problem.
Denial.
They've even told me, Judge, I think you have the problem. And so we start with that premise, and as they progress, they start changing their way of thinking. Make a long story short, I think 6 months into the program, she comes with a big smile, and I said, God, I wonder what happened here. Well, she tells me that she's enrolled at the community college. She didn't speak English. So she enrolled to learn how to be speaking English. About a month later, she comes in with an even bigger smile. And she says, well, I finally got a job, because she didn't work. And I don't mean to say that in a derogatory way, because I think most of our mothers who stay home and take care of the grandchildren, that's an enormous work. But for her, this was a challenge to learn something new, something different. Well, to even make the story even sweeter is, by the time she graduated, she actually had divorced her husband and moved on by way of getting away from all of that element, and is doing rather well. There's many, many success stories that we have of people that are able to basically bring the best out of themselves. But they're so addicted and consumed with that addiction that they forget that they have talent, that brain can function.
Right, right.
We have many.
Changed their life.
We've
Now
changed their
let's
lives.
ask our volunteer about this. Margaro?
Yes, I'm an alcohol and drug abuse counselor.
Okay.
LCDC, licensed chemical dependency counselor, and I used to counsel the clients. Okay, but before I retired, I used to sit down on the court, on the drug courts, and what we did there, we referred different clients to different agencies according to the need of the client. Okay, and successful clients, I can mention a lot of them that I saw how they succeed. You know, and when I was doing the counseling, the rate was pretty high.
I had a sister years ago who's now deceased, and when Ann Richards was governor,
Okay.
she named my sister, Glenda Baker,
Right.
the outstanding drug abuse and counselor in the state of Texas,
Right.
doing exactly what you're doing.
Right.
Because she would work with the judges, help people when they got out of jail or got on probation to stay clean and
Clean.
sober. She and my brother-in-law both had been alcoholics. They were always alcoholics, but they'd gone clean and sober and made a difference. You're doing great work. We appreciate the kind of work that you
Thank
do.
you.
Well, actually, Margaro's work, and when I say his work, and all the clinicians and treatment providers are the ones that really assist team members in this process, because in drug court it's a team effort. It's not only the judge. We as judges can't step over that line and get into treatment. That's not our responsibility. So we depend on their assessments. Their assessments are so valuable to us because it enables us to follow what kind of regimen of treatment they're going to be progressing, and how is it that they're going to be changing that behavior that they have, because there are a lot of things that happen. No one treatment plan is successful for an individual. Each individual is so different because they come with so much history, environment, family, and things of that nature that we have to learn from those individuals. And we can only hope that some of these individuals that go through the program and conclude it and complete it and graduate, they continue on that journey on recovery, so we can make them successful citizens here in the community.
Now, you learn from each other in conferences, and I know Bonnie was headed to a conference when she had her auto accident. You have your conferences annually. Are you having one in El Paso?
Yes, we are very fortunate to be hosting the 11th annual, the Texas Association of Drug Court Professionals, and it'll be hosted here in El Paso at the Marriott on October 6th, 7th, and 8th.
Now, this is the year 2010. So if they show
2010.
this program in the future, it may not fit the same date, but you do have an annual conference, and
We have an
sometimes
annual-
it's here.
Yes, and what we do is we rotate it around the state, and so El Paso's first time we're going to be holding it here in El Paso. So we're very privileged and honored to be able to do this.
Okay, so state the dates again, and give a telephone number or email or whatever you'd like for contact.
The number that you can call is 834-8232. That's County Criminal Court at Law Number 2. Case manager is Leticia Medina. She's in charge of some of the planning there. The dates of the conference are October 6th, 7th, and 8th of this year.
Good, that's great. What about your role as a lawyer in some of these conferences? Are you a presenter?
I don't think I'll be presenting at this one, but the attorneys present. What happens is the drug court team is composed of kind of roughly, and it varies a little bit, but it has the judge is the part of the, there's also the prosecutor, there's a defense attorney, there's a clinician, and there's an individual from probation, and then normally there's an individual, either one or two law enforcement individuals. And the idea is it's essentially a holistic treatment method, and it's not, I guess, as adversarial as normally it's intended to be when it's simply outside of the drug court environment, where it's myself as the defense attorney versus the state as the prosecutor, and I'm zealously advocating for my client. Here the goal is your client is already pled, he's already decided to rehabilitate himself and work on rehabilitation. The goal is to make sure and ensure that he succeeds with that rehabilitation. And so that's usually where the presentations at the conference will go, is toward one of those different facets, for lack of a better term.
And what kind of caseload do you have in El Paso County?
Oh,
I mean, it must be tremendous.
Just
So many people drink and drive. Yeah.
I'll tell you, judges here in this county work very hard. And we have a tremendous caseload. And so it's an ongoing, it's just wonderful, first of all, to be working. And then, of course, these cases, first of all, affect not only the community and the individual, but they affect the families, because it can affect other families. Anytime I think individuals who are drinking and driving expose themselves to possibly hurting somebody seriously or injuring somebody very seriously. So our caseload is enormous, and so we tackle it the best we can every day.
Recently I had some people on my program with Mothers Against Drunk Driving, and two of them had been my students, and they work in that field. Do you work with organizations such as that? Tell us about any of those relationships. I like networking stories. What other groups do you network with to reach your objectives?
We work with the Texas Workforce Commission. A lot of these individuals who come into our system, you would be surprised, have never prepared a resume, never learned how to interview. And so they teach them those skills. We have networking with folks who employ these individuals, who will take a chance with them, because a lot of these individuals, especially your folks that have felony convictions, normally will see closed doors because of that background check. And so we have employers out here in this community that take a chance with these individuals and give them a chance. We have, we have so many. Brock, I think you may work with some of those.
One thing we're trying to do in El Paso, and it's kind of following one of the outgrowths at the conferences, is funding is always an issue for all organizations, right, especially nowadays. Yeah. And we're starting a drug court foundation in El Paso. The purpose of that foundation is so that the drug courts can work with individuals for outreach and help provide the holistic approach that drug courts do. Work with an individual who has an apartment complex. As part of the Drug Court Foundation, what we'd like to do is any nonprofit foundation, we'd like to start and have a means of funding and provide the people that we're servicing, the individuals in the drug court, with a means to success. So we will work with local landlords, for lack of a better term, to have them say, hey, we have an individuals that we'd like to place in your apartment complex. If you can give us subsidized rate, you know who these people are because we're sending them to them. We're vouching for them. They're going to be supervised. They're going to report to individuals. We'd like to help you in your goal, succeed and rent your apartments, and at the same time we'd like to find stable houses where these individuals can have a house. Also, then we can have somebody who we can send them to have jobs and would be able to employ them. Much the same as you're talking about at Concordia, but while these individuals not doing the community service hours for probation, but also having them have a job where they can understand that we've told them this is an employer who understands their position. They're not going to have to hide the fact that they're on probation or deal things, because sometimes you deal with the fact that a probationer doesn't want to tell somebody he's on probation. Why? It's a stigma, that comes along with it. So
I know a number of these people get into the construction fields, painting, drywall work, and things like that. A number of years, every year now we have a party for the probationers at Concordia Cemetery, for example. And at some of these parties, some of these people come up to me and say, I used to be doing everything bad and wrong and destructive. And now that I'm helping to do this, clean this up, lift up the gravestones that have been vandalized and something, this is the first time I ever did anything positive in my life. I've heard that more than once with some of these probationers. You've heard that.
Yes, and I think Margaro says yes.
What about it? You've heard the same thing.
Oh yes. these people have been drinking for years, yeah. And when they stop the drinking and they get into treatment, then they start thinking, they get more energy, and they want to do something with the positive energy, than they were wasting their lives with the drinking.
You're building on self-image in a way.
Image, right.
Now, some of you can't solve all of them. You can't win all of them. You can't.
If you help one, I mean,
That's what I was going to make
yes.
a point. That's what it is, if you can
That's
help
what
one.
counts.
The recidivism rate is very low of these individuals reoffending, and we're very proud of that. But you're absolutely right, Professor. We can't. We wish we were at 100%.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But we give it all we have. The team effort is very strong and passionate about rehabilitating these individuals. The component that's very important here is, when you're in recovery, we've learned that family, close friends that really want to be involved with this process that they're undergoing is very important. So we congratulate a lot of the family members because they're the ones that congratulate us. They thank us for returning that individual who used to be, because we now have the following. We have an individual who is now supporting his family. We have a mother that's now taking care of her kids. We have a mother now that's not only taking care of her kids, but possibly going to school and working. And so we have an individual also that's working and now paying probably his support if he's been divorced. So we make them support their dependents. We make them have a job. We make them pay their bills, their fines, their court costs, so that they don't become a liability to the taxpayers, but actually a positive component, returning and having that person now pay his taxes. So there's many, many, many components that we have in rehabilitating an individual.
Better do that than send them to prison or jail.
These are low-level offenders, even though I can tell you that anytime you get behind the wheel, of course, you can actually very seriously, and of course, I think most of your audience will know that this is a very, very serious concern to this community. Fatalities continue to rise, especially here in this community. But, alcohol's legal, and so it's different from other drugs. But we try to make those individuals educated, families educate them as well about the possible consequences that it has.
You've taken off your precious time to come and be with us today.
My privilege.
About how many cases do you hear per day? Give us kind of an average. How many are you actually hearing per day?
On a good day, we can go through about 80.
80 cases in one day?
And that has...
That's because the lawyers have worked out things before they get to you?
We depend on the attorneys to work very, very hard, and I'll tell you, the public defender's office, the private bar, the county attorney's office, the attorney general, your district attorneys, all work very hard for this community. So they're all engaging in the courtroom with all these cases. So, and then you have your community supervision department who also assists the courts very well. You have your treatment providers. Courts are very blessed here in this county to have a great, great team of people that work. And so they do that.
Margaro, about how many are you counseling with on a regular basis?
When I was doing counseling, I had about 30 clients, 30 to 40 clients in my caseload.
Okay. And what about Brock as an attorney?
Your caseload kind of varies depending on the number of cases you have. I have probably about 50 to 60 criminal clients right now. The majority of those are probably misdemeanor offenses because you can carry a lot of those, but as you said, one of the things you try and do is you try and work everything out ahead of time so that when you show up to court, you can present a coherent, but also not only a good defense, but also a good plan for how to resolve the issue that is in front of the court at that point in time. And because it helps everybody when everything is resolved amicably and with as little intervention from the court as possible. Because
do some of them come back to you? I know you've been in this field a short time, it's private practice, and the judge can answer this. Do you have some come back and say, thank you very much for changing my life and turning me around?
Yes, very much so. When you deal with some of these individuals, and I alluded to it earlier, I've seen individuals come back to different courts I've been assigned in, and they come back and they say, I appreciate it. What I needed at that point in time was a wake-up call. Sometimes it's just a weekend in jail to get them their mind right, so to speak, but also Probation is anywhere from a year to 2 years at the misdemeanor level and up to 10 years on a felony level. And so it's a lot of supervision over a long period of time. And when you're under the kind of supervision that's in the drug court, they have to perform or
Face the
yeah.
consequences.
Yeah, right. Same thing. We have just about 3 minutes left. Some come to you and say, Judge, I didn't want to be in front of you when I was there, but now I've been through this. I want to thank you.
Oh, I see them all the time. I'll see them at stores. A story that just comes to me, an individual is working at your one of your Lowe's stores, and he not only thanked me, but he's now the regional manager.
Oh, success story.
And so I tell him, well, welcome to my world, because now you're going to be dealing with employees who possibly will give you a lot of excuses for not wanting to work.
Right.
And so there are many, many occasions where I'm approached, even when they're with their families. The wives, the husbands will come and thank me. That is one of the greatest feelings that no one could pay me enough money to see. When the families are united and they're functioning and there's love and there's this challenge, that's beautiful.
And that's
To me,
why
it's
you're a
great.
public servant, right?
I think so. I think so. That's why I enjoy my job. I
That's
sure
right.
do.
And they send you little notes, or cards, thank
Right.
you cards,
Right. Well, this has been a great program that we've had you here on this, and you've gotten some information. It's just a conversation. That's what my
Right.
show is about. It's just a conversation about perspectives on El Paso, and you just have shown us one of the most important perspectives, because drunk driving is a serious problem in our community, and you help change it and make things better for us.
Well, I'll tell you what, Professor, we hope that when we're getting close to this conference, that maybe we can bring some of the individuals coming in from Washington who are dealing with this on a national
scale.
perspective. And hopefully maybe we can get them programs so they can give you that perspective.
Very good.
Thank
Well, our
you so
time
much.
is gone. Once again, thank you for being with us.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you
And
for your
we hope
time.
Thank
to
you.
see you out in the community in the future. And thank you for tuning in for Perspectives El Paso, and join us for another great program in the future.